Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. 2 days after inauguration of President Tinubu, the new administration is facing challenges regarding fuel subsidy removal as the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited confirms adjustment in the pump prices of petrol across the country. On the interview segment for today, we focus on leveraging on foreign relations for economic growth in the Tinubu agenda with a journalist, author, and former deputy principal spokesman of the Tinubu presidential campaign, Ajuri Ngelale, as our guest. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to some developments in the polity. The Nigerian National Petrol Company Limited has confirmed the adjustments of pump prices of premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, across the country. In a statement signed by its Chief Corporate Communications Officer, Garuba Muhammad, earlier this Wednesday, the NNPC says the adjusted pump price is in line with current market realities. The NNPC assured that the company is committed to ensuring a ceaseless supply of product as it sincerely regrets any inconvenience the developments may have caused. Meanwhile, the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress says the position of organized labor on the planned removal of fuel subsidy has been clear and alternatives must be provided to limit its effect. The NLC president listed the alternatives to include repair of the country's 4 refineries and provision of transportation alternatives for the Nigerian workers. This development comes as fuel queues resurfaced in several parts of the country. The House of Representatives has also commended the president and appealed for patience as it calls on oil marketers to lend support to a good cause. The Civil Society Central Coordinating Council has called on aspirants for the House of Representatives Speakership, Aliyu Betara, Ahmed Wase, and others to step down and support the consensus candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC, Tajuddin Abbas and Benjamin Kalu. The group described Abbas and Kalu as the most competent duo to preside over the affairs of the 10th House of Representatives, insisting that the APC's zoning arrangement is just and fair. They also acknowledged the right of other candidates to contest for the position, but asked them to show loyalty by respecting and supporting the zoning arrangement of the party. A chieftain of the All Progressives Congress APC, Kabiru Marafa, has declared that President Bola Tinubu will reward party members who worked for his victory in the last presidential election. Speaking in Abuja at a meeting with members of the Zamfara State Chapter of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Marafa said the party has had challenges of putting square pegs in square holes in terms of reward system. Marafa said party members should expect a change in the reward system in government, stressing that those that did not work for the party should not expect any reward. He admitted that it is important to restore confidence in the party to foster unity at all levels.
The president has a stake in his mind. He is the president of the whole country, not for the Zamfara alone, but he is a person that appreciates people. He is the person that appreciates what people have done. We have told him everything. He is aware of the anti-party that was committed in the Zamfara state, and he knows the party papers and everything.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our guest of the day, who is a journalist, author, and former deputy principal spokesman of the Tinubu presidential campaign, Ajuri Ngelale, for discussion on leveraging foreign relations for economic growth in the Tinubu agenda. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by a journalist, author, and former deputy principal spokesman of the Tinubu presidential campaign, Ajuri Ngelale for discussion on leveraging foreign relations for economic growth in the Tinubu agenda. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, my dear sister. Good evening to you and good evening to all of our esteemed viewers.
So, after much anticipation, the administration of Bola Tinubu has taken off. But what should Nigerians expect from President Tinubu in his attempt to tackle the challenges facing Nigeria?
Well, you know, for those of us in particular who believed from the beginning that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was the man that was going to bring the kind of transformation we have sought for decades now, that he was a man who had a proven track record of performance as a former governor of Lagos State, and that he could replicate that nationally. For those of us who believed that we have elected a decision maker on whose desk the buck stops, we have been vindicated. We have seen the events over the course of the last several hours since he first sat in the office on Tuesday morning. And we have seen a rapid reaction on his part to issues and situations that have evolved in the country. I would point you to the development that took place in Ikoyi just some time ago, where officials of the Department of State Security essentially barricaded and closed off the EFCC office quarters in Lagos. It was without any serious amount of time passing, just a few hours before President Bola Ahmed Tinubu released an immediate directive for the DSS to immediately evacuate that facility. These are the kinds of urgent responses, urgent actions that we expect from the political leadership in our country. I think Nigerians for some time, for one reason or the other, felt that there may have been situations where there had been maybe indifference or indecision or some confusion between various institutions of government that was simply not being resolved. In fact, it gets to a point where heads of agencies are even openly fighting in public, and you find that there's no real resolution. We are now seeing a very fast and thorough and comprehensive response by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and the President of the country. This is what we voted for. That's just one example. When His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu told Nigerians and indeed told the international community on the day of his inauguration that the subsidy is gone, Nigerians can see today that he is a man of his words. When he says it, he means it. And when the subsidy is gone, it is gone for good. We have seen that. And I must take this moment to really applaud our people across this country who have seen the adjustment in the pump price around the country and recognize that what is good for the country now is to ensure that the tens of billions of dollars that is being pillaged by just a few individuals in both the private sector and in some pockets of the public sector in the oil and gas regulatory authorities, that we've closed off those loopholes, and that we are going to have a sector that will be internationally competitive. We are going to have tens of billions of dollars freed up for the development of our economy across sectors, the provision of world-class schools, hospitals, railways, roads, bridges, airports, seaports, dams, power plants, and the like. This is the nation that Nigerians want to build, and they have shown their commitment to that today by their response to the very necessary action that has now been implemented by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. I'm very proud of them, and I know that in a very short while, they will fully appreciate that they have made the right decision to back and elect and after election support President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as he decisively and conclusively deals with the various challenges facing our dear nation.
All right, so we'll definitely still come back to this issue of subsidy. But the president also promised to take tough decisions in his attempt to turn things around in the country. In what areas do you think these are best needed? I'm
sorry, my sister, the last part of your question cut out. Can you repeat that, please?
The president has promised to take tough decisions in his attempt to turn things around in the country. In what areas do you think these are best needed?
Well, I think there are, of course, several sectors that require urgent attention. And this is by no means in any way assert that the previous administration of President Muhammadu Buhari did not give its able best to deal with many of the deficits that this nation suffered from in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the provision of social safety nets and the like, all of which had been substantially upgraded under the previous administration. But it does speak to the fact that where you have 50 years, essentially, of neglect and maladministration, it's not something you're going to turn around in 8 years. It's something that's going to require continued government attention. And certainly we have confidence because of the track record of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that this can be deepened and expedited and even enhanced in terms of its quality. Let me say that there are a few issues on the table. You're looking at, obviously, deepened infrastructure investment. You're looking at a massive increase in revenue generation across the board, not just in terms of how we are going to ensure that Nigerians at all income levels are paying their fair share of tax, but also in terms of how we create new opportunities for Nigerians so that they are in a situation of employability, so that they're in a position to pay tax. In addition to that, you're also looking at the fact that you're now freeing up tens of billions of dollars with the removal of the fuel subsidy that will now be reinvested in very critical exploration activities across this country. The president has been very clear, just as he did in Lagos, that it is time for our nation to not just think of how we're going to share national cake. No, it's time to enlarge that national cake to such an extent that, there's more than enough to go around to all parts of this country, not individuals, not into the pockets of a few elites, but into those developmental programs and policies that will ensure that the wide and robust masses of our people are uplifted from poverty, from undereducation, from unemployment, and many of the other vices that have really been the order of the day for such a long time in our country. If you're looking at agriculture, we are now going to scale up on what President Muhammadu Buhari achieved in terms of moving us very close now to total food self-sufficiency, to now getting to the point where we can mechanize our agricultural systems and value chains, that we can ensure that we create these market boards across the country where we can secure a basic minimum selling price for all commodities for our farmers to ensure that they have adequate profit margins for reinvestment and for the employment of new staff across farms across the country, therefore employing our people and expanding the tax net. And then, of course, it also allows us to really do what we campaigned on across the board, but specifically on the issue of the establishment of a consumer credit system. His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was very clear in his inaugural address that it is time now to not just talk about establishing consumer credit system, but to actively develop what he called a credit culture. The fact that you can have a good or a service without necessarily fully paying for it upfront, in a way that is incremental, in a way that is installmental, in a way that is suitable to the unique income situations confronting each individual Nigerian family. This is the future of the Nigerian economy, to create a broad base that allows for all Nigerian families, irrespective of income level in the country, to access certain goods and services so on a sustainable basis, and also upgrade. When they're done with their old car, they can now upgrade to a new car on that same, within the parameters of that same credit system. This creates sustainable employment. You have young men and women, young Nigerians, producing cars, building homes across the country, and all sorts of other, internally manufactured products that we had hitherto been, importing from abroad, creating jobs in other countries and all of that. That comes to an end, and it comes to an end now. And today's move was a major step in that direction.
All right, so let's get back to the issue of fuel subsidy, which is already generating ripples. With the new pump price regime announced by NNPC, what economic benefits will this bring in the long run to mitigate the suffering in the land?
Well, I think the first point of mention, if we talk about the immediate benefits, is that the current scenario in which our nation is essentially borrowing for a few elite groups of people to essentially smuggle these imported refined petroleum motor products across the border to their own benefit and the benefit of a few corrupt regulators that have been working with them, that this is not just untenable, but that we can now rededicate and reinvest those resources. Some within the NNPC to ensure that we can expedite the development of other frontier basins, such as the Bida Basin, such as the Anambra Basin in the southeast, such as the Benue Trough in the Middle Belt, and many other frontier basins that we know have prolific oil and gas deposits. We can now really invest in going into those places and accessing those massive oil and gas deposits that have been totally untapped to expand the revenue of the Federation. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, of course, you're now going to see much more funding being paid back into the Federation account via royalties and taxes and dividends owed to the federal government that will now be onwardly shared to the other tiers of government, the state governments and the local governments. This is the kind of change that Nigerians have been clamoring for. It has been something that has been difficult in the past because we had seen a situation where labor unions would try and hold successive governments by the throat to ensure that this does not happen. But we have said that we have seen enough collusion between some of these labor unions and some of these, very, corrupt groups of black marketers who are paying off some of these people to continue to resist the removal of the fuel subsidy. But today, and with this election first, with this election of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they have decided that a man that openly campaigned on the removal of fuel subsidy is going to be the man that they will empower to do what they gave him the mandate to do. And today, he has done it. And Nigerians should be proud of that.
All right, so that's it for the long-run benefits. But in the short run, what should government do to cushion the effect of the new petrol price on citizens?
A very important point and question. First of all, there's no doubt about the fact that the government is totally empathetic. Certainly, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even throughout the campaigns, when there was the Naira scarcity and some of the other issues that had come up, he was the one candidate that consistently stood on the side of the people, and his presidency will be no different. What we've said now is that it's extremely important that government is clearly empathetic with what the price increase at the pump is going to mean for Nigerian families across the country. And more important than the show of empathy is a demonstration of the empathy by putting in place those palliative measures that will ease their burden. Which is why much has been discussed around the issue of the conditional cash transfer and how that's going to be executed. That's something that's still on the table of the president. I believe when it comes to palliatives, there are going to be some very detailed announcements as relates to how that is going to be executed and administered in the short run. But I would say, and I think this is very important, I am no longer an SSA to the president. I'm not a presidential spokesman. I am not a government official. I am a private citizen in this country now. And as a result of that, I can speak a bit more freely than maybe I have in the past. I think, as in my individual opinion, that even as we talk about economic palliatives for our people, the time has now come, I think, to recognize as at least a government, from a government perspective, that there is probably no palliative more potent than the palliative of justice. People want justice in this country. They want to, if government is coming to tell us that we have not, that tens of billions of dollars have been stolen, that we could have used to invest in so many other very important sectors of our economy, that have been stolen by a few individuals, stealing this product, smuggling it over borders, etc., etc. And then we know that there are corrupt regulators that have been working with them. I'm not speaking as somebody spreading rumor. I'm speaking as somebody who has privileged information, who was in the corridors of power just a few days ago. And I know that the midstream and downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority has its own fair share of rotten apples who work very closely with many of these cabals that are taking our fuel abroad to the tunes of tens of billions of dollars. And they will now be pretending to be those who are defending our interests. So I think when we talk about palliative, If Nigerians see government, this new administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying, look, we are going to investigate and we're going to make sure that we recoup as much of that diverted money as possible from those illicit activity, from those illicit marketers and transporters and distributors, then Nigerians will say, okay, fine, the sacrifice we're making is now vindicated and validated, because we're now seeing that the people that stole this money in the first place are being brought to book. Justice is a very powerful, very potent palliative. And I'm certainly, as a citizen of the country, very hopeful that rule of law and order and justice and anti-corruption is not going to be something we just talk about, but something that Nigerians will actually get to see and experience for themselves under this administration. So let's watch and see.
Fantastic. So on the president's first day in office, we observed the presence of the NNPC Group CEO and the CBN governor. What do you think Nigerians can deduce from his first few days in office?
Well, I think one of the very clear indicators is that there is somebody taking a decision at the top, and there's one person taking that decision. It's not a group. There's no influence. There's no manipulation. There's no he said this one said this one, and people are saying different things from different sides of their mouth. This is one man at the top taking a decision, and everybody knows that this is the man taking the decision, and he's taking the decisions rapidly. And I think that's the first signal that has been sent. The second signal is that there is going to be a no-nonsense approach from the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I cannot speak from inside of that administration. I am not in that administration. But what we can see from the outside looking in is clearly what we know of him from his days governing Lagos, is that this is somebody who does not wait to solve a problem. In fact, he's the kind of person that anticipates problems before they come and proactively puts in place those measures and procedures to checkmate problems before they can even arrive, not to speak of how he will react to a problem that is already pre-existing. This is who we elected, and Nigerians will be proud of that in due course as they see things unfold in the country. But let me just add that when we look at the projection, you would recall that one of the first activities that the president had really given a lot of attention to after he was inaugurated on the same May 29th, on the same Monday, was he spent hours engaging in very specific, well-arranged meetings, almost bilateral, delegation by delegation, with the various visiting delegations that came to honor him and honor Nigeria on the day of his inauguration. And he was able to get into very substantive issues in the interest of the nation, really kickstarting the process of putting together a very cohesive, very strategic foreign policy that's going to ensure that the interest of our nation, as it relates to economic development, as it relates to political stability, as it relates to having effective geopolitical relations and, with other countries and positions on global issues of the day, that he's already started putting those kinds of positions forward to his contemporaries around the world. This is the kind of proactive leadership that we elected. This is the proactive leadership we're seeing, and I'm very optimistic that the respect and goodwill shown to Mr. President on the day of his inauguration is just a small foretaste of what we can expect from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in terms of his ability to tap into decades-old, very rich, extensive networks of friends in the private and public sectors across various countries of the world, east, north, and west. So this is something that I think we're all going to be able to look forward to, and the fruits will be showing up very soon.
So, Mr. Ajuri, this meeting with foreign delegations who came to witness his inauguration, how do you think this will impact Nigeria's foreign relations in a complex global environment?
Truly, there's no doubt about the fact that Mr. President takes office at a time when you have multifarious crises around the world. We know what is going on between Russia and Ukraine, and we know what that has meant for supply chains, from energy to food production and distribution, to even the international affairs, how it has polarized in many ways various geopolitical groupings within the global community, and how member nations have, various nations have taken positions on one side or the other. When I say one side or the other, I would be referring to the bloc that everybody knows is led by the People's Republic of China, and then of course that includes Russia, Iran, increasingly Saudi Arabia, and many other like-minded countries. And then of course the bloc that is led by the United States of America, that includes many of the Western European nations, the G7 as it were, and many of even the G20 countries, including Japan, South Korea, and the like. We've seen a polarization. Now, what that now means is that Mr. President is taking office at a time when you have countries like South Africa now, because I want to bring it back to Africa and what the context is. Of the major economic players on the African continent, you have South Africa, for example, taking the position that they are quote-unquote neutral, even though they have been found to be supplying arms directly to the Russian Federation. So they've more or less taken a side. It's not too much of a surprise because they're a member of BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But it also creates some type of complication in terms of the position of other African nations as it relates to support for Ukraine. Obviously, Nigeria has a stated position that it wants the aggression in Ukraine to end, that it wants peace to be brought to that region, and that it supports all the moves of all the peacemakers to ensure that it arrives at that conclusion. But what it also means is that increasingly there are going to be very tough, serious decisions that will be made, not just by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but by his entire foreign policy apparatus that I'm sure he's going to put together in the days and weeks ahead, that will now be looking at how we stratify those factors that will lead us to side with one nation or the other, one bloc or the other, and on what issue. So, for example, right now in the United States, you have an attempt by the United States government led by President Joe Biden to really create a kind of bifurcation or a split, two-split view of countries to be grouped as democracies and autocracies. Those are countries that are not run under a constitutional democratic setup. And what that now means is many of the countries that are siding with the United States, whether it be diplomatically, politically, or economically, or even in defense terms, in security terms, they are now increasingly having to, as a condition of siding with the United States on this core concept, are now having to try and move away from traditional allies who might not be operating traditional constitutional democracies, but are very important partners. For example, Nigeria has a very important partner in China, who on the lowest interest rates you can find anywhere in the world, are providing very critical infrastructure projects from airports to seaports to rail lines and the like. These are things that the Western world had not necessarily shown a lot of interest in partnering with Africa on. They are showing an interest in helping us develop our continent, and in exchange, obviously, we're in partnership with them. So the question now is going to be about, yes, can we have a sophisticated and well thought out foreign policy driven by thinkers, by strategists, who understand the dynamics of the global environment in which we're operating, that will say, look, yes, United States, on the issue of democracy, we side with you. On the issue of human rights, we align with you. But on the issue of economic development, you have not been there for us. And so if you want us to side with you, show us what you're bringing to the table. And part of what getting something from the table involves us knowing what we want and how we're going to present what we want. If you don't make a demand, nobody's going to give you what you're asking for. So you have to first know what you're asking for. I believe under the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you're going to have a president and a leadership within that foreign policy subsector that's going to understand very clearly that there are specific things that we are looking for now at this stage of our national development and our national life. And we are going to demand that those things are a part of whatever negotiations we're having with any country that wants us to side with them on any given issue. It's no longer about taking pictures and shaking hands with people at the White House. It's about making sure that we're coming away with something that will benefit the Nigerians who elected President Bola Ahmed Tinubu into power, and that should be the focus.
Fantastic. Let's take a break. I've been speaking with a journalist, author, and former deputy principal spokesman of the Tinubu presidential campaign, Ajuri Ngelale. This conversation returns after this commercial break. Please stay with us.
APC candidate for the speakership position of the 10th House of Representatives, Right Honorable Ajuri Abbas, PhD, Iyan Zazal, congratulates the governor of Kaduna State, Senator Uba Sani, on his inauguration. Right Honorable Ajuri Abbas wishes Governor Uba Sani success in his tenure and calls on the people of Kaduna State to give him maximum support to succeed.
Never miss a moment. Instant breaking news from all over the globe. Live streaming of your favorite programs delivered directly to you. Watch anytime from anywhere on your mobile or smart devices. Download the TVC News app today. Available on Google Play and Apple Store.
The APC candidates for the speakership position of the 10th House of Representatives, Right Honorable Ajuri Abbas, PhD, Iyan Zazal, congratulates President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima on their inauguration. Right Honorable Ajuri Abbas wishes them success in their tenure and calls on Nigerians to give them maximum support.
Lagos is the most visited state in Africa as the 5th largest economy on the continent. Covering the state and its government is no mean feat, it's a busy beat. We go beyond the curtain of tapes to travel in far into the deep.
I want to thank the Lagos State government for the healthcare facility.
To bring stories that cut across all spectrums.
A greater Lagos shall be ours.
We tell you stories that define our collective well-being as Lagosians. I'm Adedoja Salamadini. I live in Lagos, inside Lagos.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us on Politics Tonight. And I still have with me a journalist, author, and former deputy principal spokesman of the Tinubu presidential campaign, Ajuri Ngelale, for discussion on leveraging foreign relations for economic growth in the Tinubu agenda. All right, you have at various engagements stressed the need for the new administration to leverage on its foreign relationships to advance Nigeria's economy. What precisely would this entail?
First and foremost, it entails our government, the next cabinet of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to clearly determine within their various sectors, that includes defense, that includes education, that includes agriculture, that includes industry, that includes power, that includes mines and steel, that includes petroleum resource. I mean, the list goes on and on. For them to determine specifically what is it that they need, whether it is in terms of the import of manufactured goods to ensure that we can at least start the process of indigenous manufacturing of the various requirements we may need when it comes to housing, construction, when it comes to our defense industries corporation, when it comes to updating our school curricula with things like STEM education, with things like robotics, with things like design learning and design thinking. These things require infrastructural supplements that in the immediate term we might have to import them, but at least in the short term, we can leverage on semi-manufactured goods to at least start with assembly, go through a process of reverse engineering and get to a point where we can fully manufacture from beginning to end the various requirements we're going to need to provide a 21st century standard of education to our children so that they can compete anywhere in the world with the children of any other country in tomorrow's global economy. This is where we have to look forward. Now, in saying all of that, I say that it's to establish our requirements across the various sectors and then to clearly determine which countries are the foremost authorities, foremost manufacturers, and the like in the various supply chains that we require within the requirements that are determined by our various ministries, departments, and agencies. Once that's done, you can now get at the hard negotiating table at the highest level. This is president to president, foreign minister to foreign minister, defense minister to defense minister, and we know exactly what we're asking for. And we know exactly what it is that we can do for them in terms of, in some other areas, opening up this massive market of 200 million people for whatever goods and services they think they can also send back in fair exchange. That is the nature of trade. This is what we can do. But I think oftentimes what happens is that we get into this myopic thinking that foreign policy is, and part of this has to do with the kind of foreign policy administrators we've had for a long period of time in this country, both military and civilian, which is the notion that your job is, it's usually a gray-haired person, a very senior elderly person, right? You sit behind a desk. On Monday, you welcome to your office the Chinese ambassador to Nigeria. On Tuesday is the French ambassador to Nigeria, etc., etc., etc. You have these little meetings, and then your calendar ticks down, and then, okay, it's time for UN General Assembly. Let's go and attend this thing, maybe give a little remark. Then I'll go to G20, give a little... It's a very routinized kind of approach that lacks innovation, it lacks creativity, it lacks ideation, it lacks energy. And really, it lacks even projection. If you look at our successive foreign ministers, and this is not to demean or in any way, discredit anybody who has served the nation in that capacity, we honor their service. But the fact of the matter is, we have not had Nigerian positions effectively communicated to the global community. Because our traditional way of thinking is to say, oh, we should send Minister of Information to go and say something on CNN. No, this is very old school approach to foreign relations. If you look at the various programs, BBC, Sky News, CNN, Al Jazeera, and the many, they're interviewing the foreign ministers. They're not looking for ministers of information. The reason why is because a lot of the topics of the day have to deal with what is your position on global issues, not just to be talking about what good your government is doing within Nigeria. Yes, that's important. It's one part of it. But you have this other huge part of it that projects your nation to the rest of the world. So when it's time to negotiate, when it's time to get into serious-headed negotiations, people know that they're dealing with a serious country led by a very serious president in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and a very serious cabinet that he's put in place. So I think these are some of the things. And then the last point I would want to make is the need for institutional reform. Yes, the need for energy is there. We have 70% of our population, characterized by very energetic, very gifted, talented, brilliant young people, young Nigerians. We have, if you go to the youth service, go to NYSC camp, batch after batch after batch, and go and sift through the CVs and the resumes of those who are serving in places all across this country. You will find people first class, UNILEG, first, valedictorian in this foreign institution, Harvard educated, Oxford educated, Stanford educated. And where are they? They're sitting in some back room in some civil society organization somewhere in Abuja reading a newspaper. They're not being utilized. What I'm saying is that the foreign policy, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has to have a serious rethink about our recruitment process. Let's get the best and most brilliant young Nigerians and groom them through a system so that our diplomatic and foreign relations think tank is amongst the strongest in the world, with people who have been educated, with those who are manning foreign think tanks in all countries of the world. This is a major part of it. The next part of it, making sure that our ambassadors that we send out into the world, that we're not just treating this thing as a reward. I always tell people that this notion of reward, that oh, you worked for the president, you campaigned very hard, so you'll be rewarded. It is a very wrong paradigm, a very wayward paradigm. What it is, if we are building a country, what it should be is not reward system. What it should be is responsibility system. It's the fact that you have worked for the president, he has won. He has made a set of promises to Nigerians. Your own is to help him deliver on those promises. How do you do that? By receiving an assignment that is a burden. If you're doing the assignment the way it's supposed to be done, which is giving everything you have to it, it's a burden, not a reward, not a pleasure ride. So I think a change in orientation along that line. So when we appoint our ambassadors, what we are now saying is, look, yes, you may be a friend of the president. Yes, you may go back a long way. Yes, you may even be very well educated and all of that. Have a long experience in public sector or private sector. Fantastic, good. But when you are sent on assignment to go and be the ambassador to the Netherlands, go and be an ambassador to the United States, you're not just going there empty-handed to say, oh, I'm the new ambassador, and then you go and sit in the embassy, you go to the office at 9 o'clock, you leave at 5 o'clock, and whatever is on your desk, you may just minute it or sign it or something. No, what we are saying is that every ambassador should go to their various domains with a set of key performance indicators, KPIs, to say, look, this is what we need from that particular country. These are the industries where they're leading. These are the companies that are leading within those industries. We want those companies to be on your daily schedule. If you're some leader in the foreign affairs, I want to see your schedule every morning. The ambassador, the minister should be looking at his schedule to see who he's talking to. What negotiations is he getting into? What is he providing to the Nigerian Federation, Nigerian people with that assignment that he's on? He should be working. This thing is labor, it's not a game. So what we are saying is that if you do that, you reorient your ambassadorial appointees, you ensure that they are going there with a set of KPIs that they must deliver on, failing which they will be recalled and replaced. Then the international community that will know that we're a very serious country and we're doing serious business. Then we'll make sure that Ministry of Foreign Affairs is funded to ensure that our embassies are equipped and staffed and all of the various things that they need to ensure that they are no longer a source of humiliation for our country overseas. These are these are just a few things out of so many things that need to be done. But the main thing is that I believe that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has been dealing with diplomats for the last 30 years, through his experience in NADECO, through his experience as the governor of Lagos, he has been dealing with the international community for many years. He knows what the standard is. He knows what is quality and internationally accepted best practice. And I know that he is the president that is going to bring it to bear in Nigeria. And I look forward to seeing the vibrant set of people that he's going to put in place to ensure that this country is respected the way that it should be in the international community.
Oh, thank you very much for addressing these very important issues. So, if the economy is the priority, tell us how the president's economic agenda will take the country out of revenue crisis.
Some of this we discussed earlier, but just to look at that issue of revenue generation. We know that we are one of the worst-ranking countries in the world when it comes to tax to GDP, right? We're looking at less than 6%, I think, at last count. The international average or the international kind of accepted benchmark is 15%. Most countries of the world are well above 15%, including countries like South Africa and some of our contemporaries in North Africa, right? So we have a long way to go and a lot of ground to cover. Some of that has to do with the failure over the years of the National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS, to get to collect effective and accurate data as it relates to the employment/unemployment situation in the country. Right now, for example, you have one of our very hard-working and enterprising, industrious Nigerian women in the market selling textiles, for example. She has one or two young men and women in her shop assisting her. She pays them 30,000 naira a month. Let's say she makes 350,000 naira a month. After paying them, her take-home pay after profit is 250,000 naira a month. Right now in this country, the NBS is treating many people in these informal economic sectors as unemployed. They're tabulated as unemployed and under the poverty line, as not earning any income and unemployed. These inaccuracies create a situation where our tax authorities have not been able to get a full grasp of the size and scope of the informal sector in the country. That's something that that can change. That's something that will change under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He had done it in Lagos. He will do it nationally. And part of this also has to do with political will. You see, the demonstration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu over the last 2 days is that political will is not his problem. But we knew that because the political will wasn't his problem in Lagos. So why would it be now? And he's demonstrating it again. So when we talk about how we're going to really revolutionize our tax collection system, not just for the formal sector, for the banks and the telecommunications companies and the oil and gas companies and the pharmaceutical companies and all these other companies that are well known and established, and they're paying their taxes, they're factored in by the NBS and all of that. Now we have to turn our eyes to that massive block of 70 million plus Nigerians who today are being tabulated as unemployed and under the poverty line, right? Who are actually earning an income and living on that income. We believe that a Nigerian earning 350,000 naira a month should be able to pay some thousands of naira in tax to the federal government. This is going to be the basic minimum of citizenship, minimum requirement of citizenship in our country moving forward. We will not have what London and New York and Chicago and Miami and Moscow and Beijing have when we are not paying for the services that the citizens of those cities and countries are paying. And that is the fundamental reality that I believe nobody is better placed to message and demonstrate than President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has done it before. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is sector by sector, right? A situation in which we can ensure that our education sector is now tailoring toward blue-collar work. You know, for so many decades now, we've had a situation in which our parents have taught us. You know, my father is part of the same generation I'm referring to when they say, if you're not a lawyer, an accountant, a scientist, a doctor, you have failed, you have not done it, right? So this was the orientation of the generation before us. But what we are seeing, if you look at developed economies around the world and those that have lifted themselves up out of poverty, increasingly, of course, China, increasingly India and some other countries, they did it on the backs of blue-collar workers. These are carpenters. These are bricklayers. These are cement producers and mixers. These are vendors on construction sites. These are, people who are janitors and the like, blue-collar work. What we are saying is we want to demystify and destigmatize blue-collar work in Nigeria so that nobody feels ashamed that they have to be a doctor in order to be respected. No. If you are earning an income and you have built a small business as a carpenter that is employing other Nigerians, you are worthy of every ounce of respect that the president of the country commands. You should be respected. So that's what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide a pathway for Nigerian citizens who want to become blue-collar workers. They don't want to go into a 4-year bachelor's degree program in the arts or the sciences. They prefer to just do a 1-year apprenticeship, learning world-class skills in tiling or whatever the case may be, so that they can go and create their own enterprise. We can even give them capital as they're leaving the door of that apprenticeship academy. This is the future of work in our country for the bulk of our masses, for those young Nigerians who have not had an opportunity to get a quality education from primary to secondary to university. We are going to ensure that we step in the breach and we give them another pathway to prosperity. That is a commitment we're making, and we believe that if we do so, once we do so, that we're going to also be able to ensure that these are the individuals on a broad base that will be paying tax, and as a result, you now have sustainable revenue generation beyond oil and gas. That is really the future of the Nigerian economy. I could go into all the other sectors, but for want of time, I believe that suffices for now.
Let's go on with the issue of the young Nigerians who is a critical section of the population. I mean, the president has promised to work closely with the youth for more development in the country. But how will the president harness their potential for national development?
And this is part of what we're discussing, right, is ensuring that we leverage on the talent and skills and really that very almost inherent, innate entrepreneurial drive of our people. Our people want to succeed. It's not a mystery or by magic wand that everywhere we go, we rise to the top. We go to Russia, we don't speak Russian. after the first year. We're fluent in Russian, and we're entering companies and rising to the top of those countries after 10 years in a country where we weren't even speaking the language. That's who we are. This is what we can do. Now the issue is about how do we wield that? How do we leverage that in such a way that we take off the shackles that Nigerians have been shackled with within the country? We don't need to wait for them to go abroad before they're able to fully manifest their abilities. We want a situation where they can do that at home, and where those who are abroad can say, wow, look at my brother in Onitsha, look at my brother in Port Harcourt, or my sister in Lagos. What is happening? Maybe I need to go back home. This dead-end middle-income wage job I'm doing here, maybe I'm wasting my time. I'm seeing my family members in Nigeria making it from nothing to something. This is the future of the Nigerian economy. So part of this is going to be multiple-fold. On the one hand, it's education, right? Preparing your next generation to effectively compete in the knowledge-based global economy of the 21st century. That's on the one end. On the other end, you appreciate the fact that you have tens of millions of Nigerians that don't come from privileged families, who cannot go to a full primary school, a full secondary school education, not to speak of university. We want to ensure that we create a pathway to prosperity for them through our blue-collar apprenticeship work scheme across all states of the Federation. That's another one. Then the third one is those who have the drive and the passion to get a university education but may not come from privileged households. What we are saying is that on government's own end, we are going to, once and for all, this is a promise that we made during the campaigns, and a promise that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is standing on to today, which is that 4 years will be 4 years, 2 years will be 2 years. Whatever your degree program is, that is when you will finish, because we will put a final end to this issue of industrial disputes and labor disputes by ensuring that these things are decisively dealt with within the realistic parameters of the contemporary Nigerian economy. We are going to do it, and we're going to do it finally. Then the next leg of this is also appreciating that once you dealt with the labor issues so that Nigerians can live a very predictable life, right? You know you're going in for 4 years for bachelors, you know you're going for 2 years for masters and all of that. What we are now saying is for those underprivileged households that have been able to produce a secondary school graduate, for example, just like Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president, did in Lagos as governor, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, putting in place the payment of NECO fees on behalf of indigent families. We're going to scale that up at the federal level under his presidency to ensure that we introduce school loans, so that people that don't have the money up front will still have access to the financing they need, not just for their education, but also for their residence, making sure that they have access to a hostel, making sure that they have access to the basic foods and provisions that they need to be able to be quality students that are not distracted by poverty and by hunger and things of that nature. This is the future, and we believe that once we do that, then you now have an equipped generation of young people, right, whether blue collar or white collar, educated, uneducated, but skilled. Then you can now say, look, we're going to give you, you can tap in as a citizen, you can tap into a dedicated MSME development fund that's targeted to under 35 age Nigerians.
Running out of time, but let me quickly ask you this. Let me come to you. As a son of Rivers State that is concerned about the plight of the Niger Delta region, how do you think President Tinubu can bring more development to the region than his predecessors?
You know, this is something that I get emotional about, but let me just say that President Muhammadu Buhari had the heart for the Niger Delta. The albatross around his neck, though, was the fact that the people he empowered and entrusted with the authorities to develop that place, particularly from the federal end, when we talk about NDDC, Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, both first term and second term, and of course the Ogoni cleanup that was domiciled under the Federal Ministry of Environment. These were substantial failures, and we have to be honest about that. There's a reason why several administrators were sacked on the grounds of corruption, many of them investigated by the EFCC, even though we've seen no conclusion to those cases, very sadly, but almost predictably at this point. And so there's been an abuse of trust. The biggest thing that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can do to avoid the same fate is to ensure that those who are sent to the NDDC to lead. I'm not talking of the ones who are there now, the governing board and the day-to-day management, who are accusing each other in broad daylight of corruption. Both of them are accusing each other of corruption, and they're just there, and we're watching them, looking at them. What we need is a very serious set of people, and I trust the president for this. This is not a rewards program. It's not he's my brother. He was in my, he's been with me for the last 12 years. I know him. I like him. I know his family, so I'll give him this assignment. No. We've tried that. It failed abysmally. What we need are people with proven integrity, people who have been in government, and you cannot find where they were stealing money to build houses and hotels. We need proven people to go and man that place, who know what to do. It's amazing to me when I think back and I say, so from the year 2000, you're telling me that we didn't have anybody with the sense and vision to say, look, we can incorporate a subsidiary under the NDDC, and that by now would have been a partner in several joint venture projects in the upstream in terms of exploration and production. The NDDC today should have a subsidiary that is a joint venture partner with the NNPC, drilling and generating its own revenues instead of looking at federal budget. We should, in the downstream, we should be looking at how we should have retail filling stations under that subsidiary of the incorporated subsidiary of the NDDC, where we would have had filling stations across the Niger Delta with the locational advantage it provides. We would have done all of that. We wouldn't even be looking at federal government. We would instead be, with NNPC, looking at new opportunities in the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors of the oil and gas sector. Instead, we get some money from federal budget in our own is to steal it, to go and build useless house in Dubai and London. We will live for 30 years, leave it for children who will not appreciate it. What are we doing? This is the plight of the Niger Delta. So my appeal to Mr. President, let him demonstrate his love for the Niger Delta people by not empowering those who he knows have embezzled huge money from their states. Let him empower those who have proven integrity, who mean well for the people of the Niger Delta, and who will deliver on the promise of that region, instead of continuing this tragic trend of erosion and destruction.
Ajuri Ngelale, a journalist, author, and former deputy spokesman of the Tinubu presidential campaign. Thank you very much. It is always a pleasure having you on Politics Tonight. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Goodbye.
New Happy Sachets. It has a thick formula, so all you need is just one sachet for your toilet bowl. It gives 10 times better cleaning and big savings too.
Wow, Helen!
Sparkling clean toilet with Happy Sachet.
Itchy, greasy, and smelly braids can be a thing of the past. Introducing the new Ruber braids from Expression. Made with 100% Aquatex fiber from Canicolon. The new Ruber braids from Expression is extremely fast drying and perfect for friction-free washing. Stay dry this season with the new Ruber braids from Expression, now available in pre-stretch and regular braid variants and in beauty shops near you.
So, all in favor say aye. Those against no, the ayes have it.
What do you know about the legislature, its role in governance, and as one of the three arms of government? Lagos Parliament is here to bring it to you as it is. Here to bring you every detail you need to know about the legislature in Africa's most populous city. On Lagos Parliament, you get a chance to meet the lawmaker of the week. Events are critically reviewed. You can also observe plenary in Yoruba language. I am Abimbola Agbebi. Join me every Friday at 9 p.m. as I take you through the activities of the legislature.
Never miss a moment. Instant breaking news from all over the globe. Live streaming of your favorite programs delivered directly to you. Watch anytime from anywhere on your mobile or smart devices. Download the TVC News app today. Available on Google Play and Apple Store.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news. At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
It's always a great morning on the TVC Breakfast Show.
Thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
With the array of stories that matter and what's behind them.
As you say, the first blow indicates the direction of government.
Tell us what really is going on between your union and the federal government.
Once it's generated,
if you don't use it, it's waste. We are not even sure whether we have a strategy for security.
Are you saying that there was nothing wrong in that?
Was he the one driving the taxi?
Answer the question.
Reveal your morning with all you need to know.
Like the
yes, just mundane lyrics.
Yes.
How does that fit into your scheme of events or duties right now?
No chief of staff, no general has the right to call a governor to order. The governor has been elected by his people.
Start your day right, because this is the breakfast show that
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Cancer, a terminal disease, is an abnormal cell growth with potentials to spread to other parts of the body. A number of factors could trigger this in the body, such as smoking, radiation, presence of virus or cancer-causing chemicals, obesity, hormones, chronic inflammations, and lack of exercise. To curtail the spread of this global scourge, health practitioners all over the world have divided into various forms of research, screening, and treatment of these diseases, which causes about 72,000 deaths and an estimate of 102,000 new cases annually. In Edo State, the Benin Cancer Registry reported 1,846 related cases of cancer between 2014 and 2016, a situation which has prompted advocacy through free screening.
The luck we have is all these cancers, they are preventable, and once detected early, they can be treated. So we thank the management of UBT for this initiative, because what it does for us now is open doors for the public to have an idea of what we do.